I've never made it to college. I've never been to a university. I grew up in a poor family, and when I graduated from high school, there was no chance of my going to college, which was wonderful because you don't learn to write by going to college, you learn to write by writing, huh? And college, I can't help you become a writer, and no university can help you become a writer. All they can do is throw the doors of the library open, say, go in, huh? And feed yourself the metaphors and go home and write. That's the whole process. There's nothing else about it. No teacher can help you, no professor. I can't help you, except you write every day, every day, every day for 8 or 9 years, and you can't continue to be bad, can you? Huh? Yeah. I defy you to be lousy after 8 or 9 years, but you got to do it every day, and you have to do it with love, huh? It's got to be love. And nothing that your friends say, nothing that your professors say, nothing that your relatives say has anything to do with what you're going to do at the typewriter, huh? To become yourself, to have fun, to love what you're doing. Huh? And then out of this love, finally, a day comes when you write something that's different and beautiful, and the tears stream down your cheeks, and you say, oh, at long last, at long last. It was the beginning of discovering myself. That's what you're out for, huh? To get all this stuff out of your ganglion, out between your ears, all the things that have collected. The real you, huh? Not the fake one of writing for your friends over here or your relatives over there or for some political cause. That's a lot of crap, isn't it, huh? It's a lot of crap. You can't write for anyone else. You got to dig in here and dig in here and hope that it finally comes out so that you're revealing yourself, huh? And all the metaphors that are collected for a lifetime and all the various kinds of tastes. I have put a label on myself very late in time. I'm a collector of metaphors. Huh? I've never used that word until a couple of years ago. It sounds awfully fancy, doesn't it? But that's really what you're looking for, the metaphor that represents you and the various parts of your life, huh? But I discovered along the way I was a collector of metaphors. Now, I don't know how I can teach you to recognize a metaphor when you see it, but what you've got to do from this night forward is stuff your head with more different things from various fields, hygienically speaking. I'll give you a program to follow every night, very simple program. For the next 1,000 nights, before you go to bed every night, read one short story. That'll take you 10 minutes, 15 minutes, okay? Then read one poem a night from the vast history of poetry. Stay away from most modern poems. It's crap. It's not poetry, huh? It's not poetry. Now, if you want to kid yourself and write lines that look like poems, go ahead and do it, but you'll go nowhere. But read the great poets. Go back and read Shakespeare. Read Alexander Pope. Read Robert Frost, huh? But one poem a night, one short story a night, one essay a night for the next 1,000 nights. But that means that every night then, before you go to bed, you're stuffing your head with one short story, one poem, and one essay. At the end of 1,000 nights, Jesus God, you'll be full of stuff, won't you, huh? You'll be full of ideas and metaphors, along with your perceptions of life and your own personal experiences which you put away, and what you see in your friends and your relatives. So you want all these things to go in, and the more metaphors you can cram yourself with, they'll bounce around inside your head and make new metaphors. That's why you're doing this. But you've got to be able to recognize one when you see one. So hygienically speaking, you've got two things to do. If you feel you have to do a novel, in spite of what I said, go do it. But in the meantime, write a hell of a lot of short stories, and then every night do these three things with the short story, the poem, and the essay. And you're well on your way to being more creative.
I was 7 years old when I went to the library for the first time. And I was hoping to find books about the Land of Oz by L. Frank Baum and Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. That was a great adventure. And I'd open the door of the library and I'd look in, and all those people were waiting for me in there. You see, libraries is people. People are waiting in there. Thousands of people who wrote the books. My greatest influences are John Steinbeck. I read The Grapes of Wrath when I was 19 years old. So you find the author who can lead you through the dark. And Shakespeare starred me there, and Hamlet starred me there, and Richard III. And Emily Dickinson led the way for me. And Edgar Allan Poe said, "This way, here's the light." That's what a library is. So you go into the library and discover yourself. We should learn from history about the destruction of books. When I was 15 years old, Hitler burned books in the streets of Berlin. So I learned then how dangerous it all was, because if you didn't have books and the ability to read, you couldn't be part of any civilization. You couldn't be part of a democracy. If you know how to read, you have a complete education about life, then you know how to vote within a democracy. But if you don't know how to read, you don't know how to decide. That's the great thing about our country, is we are a democracy of readers, and we should keep it that way.
A lot of people ask me about the genesis of Fahrenheit 451. What was I up to? Where did I live? What was I doing? Well, I lived in Venice, California with my wife, and a little $30 a month apartment. We had no money, and my wife got pregnant, and I went to New York and managed to find enough money to finance this for a while. But in the meantime, I was writing short stories. I wrote a story called The Pedestrian because I had an encounter with a policeman one night who asked me what I was doing. I was walking with a friend, and I said to the policeman, "I'm putting one foot after the other," which was the wrong answer. Very suspicious being a pedestrian walking, and because I looked at the sidewalks this way and that, and there's nobody except me and my friend. So the policeman reprimanded me, and I promised never to walk again. And I went home in a rage, and I wrote this short story called The Pedestrian, and it was published finally. And then I took the pedestrian out for a walk one night in another story, and he turned the corner, and he bumps into a little girl named Clarice McClellan. And she sniffs the air, and she says to him, "I know who you are. You're the fireman. You're the man that burns books." And 9 days later, Fahrenheit 451 was done. The original version of Fahrenheit was published in Galaxy magazine, a science fiction magazine. And then a young editor came along a few years later who had no money, and he needed material, and said, "Can you sell me something for $400? And I said, "Yes, I have a novel, Fahrenheit 451, and he bought it for $400, and that was Hugh Hefner. And it appeared in the second, third, and fourth issues of Playboy. So all the young men and all the old men of America owe me a debt of gratitude for helping start that magazine. I grew up in Waukegan, Illinois, and I'd walk down the beach with my father, and on the way we'd stop at the fire station. And my dad knew all the firemen, and some of them were relatives of mine, and I'd go in and pet the Dalmatian, And so I had an intimate knowledge of firemen, and one of my uncles was a fireman who was killed falling off a fire truck when I was a kid. And it just struck me in thinking about firemen, that what are we going to do with them in the future? The time will come when all the houses are fireproofed. So you've got a lot of firemen with no jobs. What are you going to do? I said, well, let's reverse it. Have them start fires instead of put them out. And then I had no title for the book. The original title was The Fireman. And I got curious as to what the temperature was that book paper would burn at. And I called UCLA, the chemistry department. They couldn't help me. I called SC, some of the other physics departments, and they couldn't help me. I said, dummy, call the fire department. So I called downtown, got the fire chief on the phone. I said, this sounds stupid, but tell me, what temperature does book paper catch fire at? He said, just a moment. And he came back, He said it catches fire at 451 degrees Fahrenheit. And I reversed it. I said, Fahrenheit 451, yes. So I don't know if that's true. I've never researched it since, but it has a wonderful sound to it, doesn't it? And that's how it came to birth. And I wrote the short novel in the basement of the UCLA library because I had no office. There was a typewriter there you could rent for 10 cents a half hour. So I took a bag of dimes down there and I rented the typewriter for 9 days and spent $9.80 and wrote a dime novel. And it was published in the science fiction magazine, and later I extended it to 50,000 words, and it became the novel that you know now. The book was a long time coming to birth. You could say it went back to my great-great-great-grandmother, Mary Bradbury, who was tried as a witch in Salem in 1580 it was. She escaped, but she's in all the books about witches and witch burning. And then over the years, I read about the various libraries of Alexandria burning 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, I think twice by accident, once on purpose. And then in China, I heard rumors of burnings of libraries and books, and Hitler, of course, in Germany in the early 30s. And since I'm a library person, I've never made it to college, you see. I'm self-educated in the library. So anything that touches the library touches me, and I was vitally concerned and upset to see what was going on in the world. And then there were rumors of this kind of thing during the McCarthy period, the Joseph McCarthy period. Nothing really substantial. He never really got going, but he hurt a lot of people along the way and threatened books. I heard rumors also of book burnings and censorship in Russia. And it all came true later. We found out they burned millions of books and millions of authors. Fahrenheit 451 is the only science fiction novel I've written. People call me a science fiction writer. I'm not. Martian Chronicles is a Greek myth, an Egyptian myth. It's fairy tales, it's fantasy. There's no science fiction in there at all. But Fahrenheit is firmly based in technology.
I published the first version of Fahrenheit in February 1951. When I moved into LA with my family, I had 2 daughters. I needed an office because my daughters were very loud and wonderful and lovely, but I had no money for an office. I was wandering around up at UCLA, and I heard typing in a room down in the basement. And I went down to the basement, and I found a room had 12 typewriters in it. I could rent a typewriter for 10 cents a half hour. So I said, my God, this is my office. Doesn't matter, I was surrounded by students. I got a bag of dimes. I moved into the typing room in the basement of the library, and I spent $9 and $9.80, and I wrote Fahrenheit 451. So you see, what a place for Fahrenheit 451 to be written in the library of all places where it wasn't being burned. So I made a contract with Valentine, and I went to the library again with the typing in the typing room, and I added 25,000 words. How did I do that? I got the characters to come to me. Montag came and said, do you know who I am completely? I said, no. I said, tell me. And the fire chief came to me, and he told me about his prior life. I said to the fire chief, why did you burn books? And he told me. And Clarice McClellan came, who was a 16-year-old girl who was in love with books and libraries and life. Clarice is me. Clarice McClellan is Ray Bradbury, the young boy who fell in love with life. And Clarice is the essence of life and the essence of love. You see, all my characters write the book. I don't write the book. All these characters come to me and say, listen to me. And then I listen to them and I put it down and the book gets written. That's how I write, you see. All these lovers surround me and they love life and they tell me about it.